Hi guys, this is Horror Studio 1 here. So for those of you guys who remember me saying that my biggest fear was of bathrooms when I was a kid, another really big fear I had was of windows. And I remember when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I got my own room, and because I used to sleep with my parents for a very long time. But once I got my own room, I remember it was this window right here actually that I have. The curtains always needed to be pulled down at night because I was afraid I would see something like a face on the window. And I remember there was a show, maybe it was on History Channel or something like that, where it was like talking about like a haunted place, and there was like a kid got thrown out in the snow by his step parents or something like that, and then he died or he went missing or he disappeared. He disappeared, I think. And then they said the haunting was that every night his face would be pressed up against the window like this, with his white, bloodless face looking in. And then I would always imagine some creepy shit happening like that if I had my windows open, so I would always need to keep them closed. Now that we're older, you don't think so much about ghosts, but you do think about some creepy encounters, horror stories in general. There was one where, remember, when I was in my teens and I was just, doing my homework, and then I see this guy out my window, this one right here, and he was one of those guys that get paid to clean your windows, but no one ever told me. And I just see this random guy at my window. I'm like, I just took a shower. I'm almost half naked. Good thing I'm not a girl. I was in my underwear. I had a t-shirt on. But yeah, that was a hell of an experience as well. And those are the experiences I've had with creepy experiences with windows that I've had. If you guys have any more creepy encounters with windows, seeing things you shouldn't be seeing or you didn't want to see, put in the comments below. So yeah, without further ado, window horror stories. Man in the window. So, I'm really freaked out right now. A little background information. I'm in my late 30s and I live in a home with my brother. He works in personal security and my fiance. I always feel really safe because my brother is home at nights and he is armed to the teeth, and we have a pit bull who is very protective of us. So, my brother recently took a temporary high clearance security job in Arizona, so he's being put up in a hotel out there. Before he left, he showed my fiance Rob and I how to operate one of his guns just in case. We live in one of the safest towns in America. Nothing bad hardly happens, it's like Mayberry. But with all this recent clown bullshit and the increase of drugs, it's better to be safe than sorry, right? So, this begins 2 nights ago. My fiance goes to bed early because he has to be up by 5 o'clock most mornings for work. So we're in bed, me, him, and the dog. I have my headphones on, and I'm watching something on my tablet. Just a FYI, I snore bad, so my poor fiance wears earplugs. Around 11:30, my dog jolts out of a sound sleep and starts growling. She goes over to the window in our bedroom and starts growling louder and louder, so I get up to check. I look outside and there's a man staring at me. He's skinny and old, grizzled gray hair, unkempt beard, vacant eyes. He looks at me and smiles, and I about lost it. Now my dog is straight up foaming at the mouth and barking. This finally wakes up my fiance, and he comes over to see what's going on. The man sees I'm not alone and takes off. We call the cops, they show up and start looking around. They find the guy's backpack. He has a notebook with my name and address and a diagram of my frickin' house. They find beef jerky, sleeping pills, I guess for my dog, scissors, twine, electrical tape, condoms, and a rusted knife. They told me that they will be on the lookout for him, but I'm really freaked out. So old man, let's never meet again. The Window Kisser. I've been told several times to post this story here, so I've been pursuing Let's Not Meet, and damn, some of these stories mess with my ability to sleep. So, here's my contribution. I first moved out of my parents' house in 2008. I was 20 years old, I had a 2-year-old daughter, and gosh damn it, I wanted to assert my independence and prove that I wasn't living with my parents because I couldn't live on my own. Overall, it was a relatively dumb idea. I moved to a cool part of town, next to campus, next to one of our art districts, but in a really beautiful neighborhood I always wanted to live in. It was a 15-minute away from the suburb my parents lived in, and since I worked nights, I'd spend way too much time driving back and forth so my mom could babysit on the nights that I worked. Despite the inconvenience, the neighborhood did not disappoint. I was in a small apartment building right in the middle of a beautiful Victorian houses. Houses that sell for upwards of over $1 million. Lovely neighbors, quiet area, no problem with anyone ever, it felt safe. There was a neighborhood watch and everything else. I think there was only one incident of car break-ins in my 2 years there, and even then, they just hit cars that were unlocked, no smashed windows or damaged property. I was living in the upstairs at the end of the building, and there was no reason for anyone other than me or my people to be near my window or my door. The guy who lived right next to me, who I've always referred to as neighbor, was a quiet guy who immersed himself in school and work. He never had people over and wasn't known for drunken antics. This story that I'm about to tell you takes place right around the end of my second year there. 2 years of nothing remarkable other than the before-mentioned car break-ins. Around May of 2010, I was outside cleaning the glass on the door and the windows and decobwebbing the cheap black iron patio furniture I got at Target. The windows were tall, I am short. In order for me to clean the upper portions of the window, I had to stand on one of the chairs and reach. And that's when I noticed something. Lip prints. Well, just one set of lips on the window, pretty high up too. I could not have reached them if I wasn't on the chair. At the time, I was mostly annoyed, thinking maybe neighbor had friends over and one of his drunk friends kissed my window, because who else would ever be near my window? After that, I always made a point to see if the lips showed up again. They didn't, so it confirmed my drunk neighbor theory in my mind. Now, this is where everyone groans and roll their eyes. Trust me, I know. I was young and I was dumb. But even that's not an excuse, because of where I lived, neighborhood-wise and within the building, there were plenty of nights I'd leave the blinds open. And not only that, but the way the apartment was set up was an L shape. Living room, kitchen, and the bedroom all in a straight line back, and then the bathroom off to the side of the bedroom. My daughter's bed was more towards the inside of the bedroom, and mine was at the end of the straight line back. I liked the way the light would come through the trees in the morning. It was really a beautiful sight, and I like waking up to it. I know, it was a dumb choice. And here's another thing that makes me want to curl up and die. Many nights my daughter, at this point in the story, 4 years old, would sleep in my bed. Until she didn't, which was probably around the 4th of July if I remember correctly. She attributed this to the tall man watches me sleep. I don't like it. But in my defense, this kid was known for saying some really creepy shit. One time, she told me the ghost of a baby pig named Baby Pig Ghost would talk to her, and he was sad because people tore him apart, and she was sad because the other ghost pigs wanted to hurt me. So her saying something like that was super creepy, but I didn't think that there was literally a tall man watching us sleep. But to appease her, and because I was thoroughly creeped out by what she said, I'd leave the blinds down at night. Most nights I was up until 3 or 4 because of my work schedule. I'd figured she was just being weird again, but that imagery just sticks with you, I guess. And on the night that put me in therapy and turned me into the most paranoid person you could ever meet, it was early August. I was asleep in my bed. I went down pretty early. My bedroom door was open like it always was. I was asleep facing the living room like I always was. The blinds were down and closed, like they had been for a month now. But the string was wonky, so one portion of the blinds always had about an inch or two of space from the windowsill. All the lights inside were off, but the patio light was on outside. I randomly woke up and looked down at my phone to see what time it was. Just a few minutes after 3, I was annoyed, thinking there was no way I'm gonna fall back asleep, and that's when I saw it. Outside of the window, I saw the silhouette of a tall person through the blinds. He was standing completely still. He was standing so still for so long that I started to think that I was going crazy. I thought I was seeing things, and that's when he sat in one of the chairs outside. I was completely frozen in sheer terror. I could not move a muscle. Texting or calling for help seemed out of the question. I was afraid he'd see the light from my phone or hear me, but then again, he sat there for so long that I convinced myself I just saw a shadow and that there was nothing there. And then again, he moved. He stood back up and turned around. He stepped closer to my window and paused. He got right up to the window and paused again, and that's when he leaned over and was looking through the 2 inches of space between the windowsill and the bottom of the blinds. He stood there for longer than what seemed feasibly possible in that bent over position. His head did not move. He just stood there looking, while I kept my eyes mostly shut. I thought if there was any way he could possibly see me with my eyes open looking at him, it'd make him snap and he'd bust in. Eventually, he stood back up and walked out of view. Then, I heard the screen door creak open. I can only assume he tried the doorknob, but thankfully, I wasn't so much of a dumb shit that I left my door unlocked. Then, I heard the door shut again, and after that, there was nothing. After I heard the door shut, and I didn't see him come back to the window, I checked my phone. It was 3:48 a.m. I quietly slid out of bed and crawled towards the bathroom and threw up. I waited until the sun came up before I called the cops. I can't explain why I was so afraid to move or make noises until then, but I was paralyzed with fear in the bathroom until then. 2 officers showed up, and I stepped outside to talk to them, and it came as a little surprise to see that the lip prints were on the window again, roughly in the same spot. I have a photo on my MacBook, but at this point, it's out of commission, so I can't access it right now. The police took their photos. The report was filed. I never slept there again. With the police report, I was able to cancel the lease renewal I had signed, and I moved back in with my parents. He was halfway through our window. About 10 years ago, a friend and I, both female, were living in a 2-bedroom row home in a large northeastern city. It was summer and hot out. I had a window AC unit in my room, but my roommate hadn't bought one out yet. So, on the really unbearable nights, she'd sleep downstairs on the couch in front of the open window. About a month after I'd moved in, I was awoken at around 4 a.m. in the morning by 2 police officers busting into my bedroom to make sure that I was okay. I was fine but confused. They told me that someone had tried to break in downstairs. I went downstairs with them, where my roommate was shaken but unhurt. What had happened was this. Someone across the street and several houses down had insomnia and stepped out onto his front stoop for a smoke. He witnessed a man walk up to our house, grab an empty trash can from the sidewalk, turn it upside down in front of our living room window, and climb up onto it to peer into our living room. By the time our neighbor realized exactly what was happening, the man had popped the screen and had one foot on the window jamb. My neighbor loudly yelled, "Hey!" which spooked the guy enough to run away, and then the neighbor called the cops, banged on the front door to wake my roommate, and then stood out front with her until the police arrived. The creepiest thing was that my roommate was asleep on the couch right under the front window, and she left the TV on across the room, also visible from the window. The would-be intruder had to have seen her there, and was entering anyway. This was no burglary. He saw a young woman asleep right in front of him and was ready to climb in right over her. She's a very heavy sleeper who had no idea this was happening at all. We're really lucky for that insomniac, nicotine-addicted neighbor, and we made sure the landlord put bars on the window later that week. There's a man outside our window. A couple years ago, me and my mom had bought Sunday tickets to Reading Festival. As I was only 14 years old, my mom did not want to camp there because of the amount of drink and drugs, so she booked a hotel for Saturday and Sunday night. On the Saturday evening, we decided to go to the hotel pool. Well, I went in the pool. My mom went in the jacuzzi. There were windows between the pool area and the gym, so I could see everything out there and vice versa. I couldn't help but notice an old man, probably 60 or so, in the gym who kept staring at us. I swam a few laps, and when I looked up again, he was gone. About 10 minutes after I had joined my mom in the jacuzzi, the old man comes into the pool area. He smiles at us and climbs into the jacuzzi. He seemed pretty nice at first, asking for our names and stuff, but his questions were starting to get weirder and weirder. He kept trying to find out where our hotel room was. All of a sudden, my mom grabs my hand and says, "Oh, look at the time, we have to go, bye," and drags me into the changing room. She looks at me and says, "I don't want you walking around this hotel alone under any circumstances, do you understand?" Of course, I said yes and asked why. She told me that, whilst the man had been talking to us, my mom saw his arm moving in a suspicious motion, and could see that his hands were, well, where they should not have been. Fast forward a few hours later, probably about 1 a.m., me and my mom are sleeping, when all of a sudden I wake up. Why? I have no idea, but I noticed that the curtains hadn't been fully shut. Now, I've read enough Reddit no sleep to know that being able to see out of the window during the night always results in disaster. My imagination and paranoia were getting the best of me, and I thought I vaguely saw someone outside the window. We were on the ground floor. I tried to ever so quietly wake my mom up by coughing loudly, but when she did wake, she asked why I was up. I said that I could not sleep because I thought I saw someone outside the window. She said I was being stupid and paranoid, but checked nevertheless. She glanced outside, then sharply pulled the curtain shut. She grabbed the phone that was plugged into the wall and phoned the hotel desk, telling them that there was a man outside her window taking photographs of us, the same man who had been masturbating over us earlier. The police were phoned, he was taken into custody, and his hotel room was checked. They have found heaps of pornography magazines, dirty tissues everywhere, and a laptop full of pictures of me and my mom throughout the day. When we were sitting in the garden, when we were eating, when we were in the pool and the jacuzzi. I haven't stayed in a hotel since. The man outside my window. Over 10 years ago, I used to live in Peninsula in Norway. It was quite idyllic there, as me, my sister, and my mom lived within walking distance of a beach. We had a short and incredibly narrow driveway that led to the house, and the only window in the house facing the driveway was my bedroom window. I was about 9 or 10 years old at the time when this incident happened. I was in the living room watching a show on Jetix. I think it was around 7 to 8 p.m. at night, as it got dark pretty fast at that time of the year in January. I'd been sitting there for hours when my mom told me to go to my bedroom and watch TV, as we were having guests soon. I grabbed my things and went inside my room. I remember the room felt really cold, so I turned on the heater and went back out to the living room to get my candy or something like that. On my way out the door, A sudden feeling of dread washed over me, and I had this feeling that someone had been watching me. I don't know how to explain this feeling, but it was as if I subconsciously could see someone outside my window from the corner of my eye, but not realize it until I grabbed the door handle. I turned around quickly and glanced at the window. Nothing. I felt really stupid and brushed it off as me just being paranoid or dramatic. I got my candy and went back into my room. The first thing I noticed was that my bedroom window had been slightly opened, and I didn't remember opening it. I figured maybe Mom did it. Suddenly, I heard a sort of scratching sound outside my window, and this time I froze still. I could not process what was going on. There was a person outside my window. His face was glued to the glass, and he was holding his hand on each side to get a better look inside my room. As my window was quite far up when standing outside, I could only see his head. For a brief second, I thought maybe he was one of the guests Mom was talking about, but I had never seen him in my entire life. He was just staring at me. I couldn't move, or maybe I could, but I did not want to. I was too scared. He looked like he was in his 40s, and I remember him having a really dark circle under his eyes. He just stood there for what felt like an eternity, but then suddenly widened his eyes and continued to stare. This scared the crap out of me, and I managed to shout, "Mom!" The guy panicked and disappeared quickly. As I was in the middle of telling my mom that this man was standing outside my window, our doorbell rang. My mom answered the door and wouldn't let me out in the hallway to see who it was. I just remember her looking uneasy when she came back. A few months later, the same man was arrested and charged with the murder after his neighbors complained about a horrific smell coming from his apartment. The police discovered the decomposing body of a 13-year-old girl in the attic who had been murdered by him. She was last seen in her bedroom and had been missing for several days. After all these years, my mom told me what the man said at the door. He told her that someone had ordered a takeout, and he wanted to check if it was the right address. This being a small peninsula, she recognized him from a small vegetable shop and realized that he was lying. She got really scared and quickly told him no one ordered anything. A year later, we moved to the city, and only now I fully understand why. I truly believe that if my mom had not been there, I would not be alive today. Sometimes I feel guilty for the girl's death and wonder if she would be alive and well today if I had been taken instead.